Hey, it's the Andy Social Podcast, episode 205, and it's your mate Andy, that's me, yours truly, doing another Crazy Talk episode, your early in the week episode, and I've got a lot of things to waffle on about, so I'm going to kick straight into it. I'm actually recording this episode, Sunday night. That's usually the time I record these episodes, but I'm recording it in my car, in the car park, because my cockatiel, Larry Burb, is, how can I say it? Cracking the shits. He's just going off upstairs. And while it's kind of cool to hear him chirping every once in a while in the background, not tonight. It's not going to happen. So he's next level. So I thought I'll just come downstairs, sit in the car really awkwardly and attempt to get through this episode. And I've got my little notepad here, so I may have to take a couple of little pit stops where I'll have to open the car up or turn the car back on to get the lights in the car back on. I've got my beer here. I've got a little Mountain Goat beer that is going to keep me company. $10 special from Liquorland, by the way, folks. I think that special's now over, but I certainly took advantage of that one. And so I've got heaps of things to talk about. So probably the main thing that's worth covering is the Scorpions and Whitesnake saga that happened. So anybody who's listening to Crazy Talk on the last episode earlier last week, at that time, the Sydney show was, cancelled. No, it was always postponed. I think it was always postponed. But the Saturday night show was cancelled, and they were trying to reschedule the date for another date, but that was still up in the air when I was recording the last episode. So, and it ended up happening on Wednesday evening, which was great for me because I finally, after all these years, got to tick this band off my list. I got to see Scorpions just in general, but I got to see them in Sydney, their first ever Sydney show after all these years, because last time they came out with Def Leppard, Klaus was sick then, and they had to cancel that. Def Leppard still went ahead without them, so there was no rescheduled date. And I mentioned, I waffled on the last episode about the amount of times I've sort of come close and missed them and whatever. So finally got to see them, and just such a good show for a guy who I think he's 70 or 71 years old, and had just come out of hospital for a kidney stone. I think he's already like a bit of a frail guy anyway. But he came out, and to be honest, like the first couple of songs, I was like, oh, okay, let's see how he goes. He's not moving too much. He's got his sunglasses on, so maybe, he's more frail than normal. But man, he owned it. His voice was on point. Just the set list was great. There was just so many classics. I mean, a lot of songs missed that I was hoping to hear, but to be honest, like I can't have my cake and eat it too. Like I knew that there was always going to be songs that I wouldn't get to hear, but man, like such a good song, such a good set, such a good show, and it was surreal to sit there. And I'll get to the sitting in a moment because I bought seats, which was just dumb. But anyway, but just to sit there and take it all in and just go, wow, like it's finally happened for me. And it was iconic for them because finally, after, decades being around as a band, they finally got to play Sydney. And that was their first ever Sydney show. And so they made a few acknowledgements along the way, and they paid a few tributes to the Australian bushfires, which was cool, but the set list was just great, and the whole stage show was just fantastic. And Klaus moved around quite a bit, and I can't get over his vocals. They were just so on point, just so good. So great show. Whitesnake opened it up. They were fantastic. It had been 12 years since I saw Whitesnake play, and to get to hear them like playing all these classic songs, especially for me, like I love 70s, late 70s, early 80s Whitesnake, the more blues era, especially when David was coming out of that Deep Purple era. But the mid to late 80s Whitesnake, where the guitars are just sort of like so much more sort of hard rock, sort of borderline heavy metal guitar playing, just those albums, Slip of the Tongue and Self-Titled, or 1987 or whatever, whatever it is. And just to hear those songs were just absolutely fantastic. And the songs off the new album were really good as well. And it was just surreal once again to just be thrown back. And I get why people older than me always gravitate towards these older shows, these nostalgic shows, because you just get thrown back to these earlier memories and these times that you've had growing up, where just these life-changing moments, coming of age, or experiencing things for the first time, and these songs and these bands were the soundtracks to so much. So I think that this show was like almost the light bulb moment for me, why so many people that are probably the next generation up above me sort of gravitate more so towards these older sort of nostalgic acts, because it's just such an amazing experience to be thrown back to years gone by, yesteryear. Oh man, I'm getting on in age. Oh, I sound so old. But it was such a great show, really, really good. And I just sat there. There's numerous moments throughout the whole night where I sort of just was reminded of really cool times throughout my life, where I got to hear these songs and just then be thrown back into the present and go, wow, they're in front of me. It's David Coverdale, or it's Klaus, it's Rudolph. And it's like all these guys are just these iconic people in rock. And it was fantastic. So a great night. And like, I saw a lot of people complaining about it being on a Wednesday night, and I get it. It was definitely a downer in comparison to what it would have been had it been on the Saturday night, because obviously, people are coming from work, so they're trying to rush to get to the gig midweek and probably having to work the next day. People were still traveling to get there, so people were trying to make arrangements to still get back to Sydney midweek. So, it's negotiating with employers and trying to get there, and time-wise and expenses once again, so people doubling up on expenses. And so I think the vibe at the show was, well, it would have been very different to what it would have been had it actually gone ahead on the Saturday. But despite that, I didn't think it was actually that bad. I thought the turnout was really, really good. And I don't know, where I was sitting, everyone was getting into it, and it appeared that the crowd was really enjoying it, and it still had this really great energy and electricity to the evening. However, I could only imagine what it would be like, at least for me anyway, after a few more beers, a bit more pre-drinking on a Saturday afternoon. I would have been far more loose had the show been on the Saturday night. So, but it is what it is, and I'm just so happy that it went ahead and it just wasn't cancelled completely, because I'm pretty sure, actually, yeah, when I record the last Crazy Talk, they hadn't cancelled Brisbane, and they hadn't cancelled Auckland. So since then, just for people that aren't sort of paying attention or keeping up to date with what's been going on, they ended up cancelling Monday night in Brisbane and Thursday night in Auckland. I think I got those dates mixed up in the last episode, but they cancelled them, and so they just stuck around in Sydney for a few extra days, and then just waited for the rescheduled Sydney show on Wednesday night. So I feel really bad for the guys in Brisbane and my mates over in New Zealand who missed out on the shows, because they would have obviously paid for tickets, and a lot of those guys may not have seen either of those bands before, so they missed out completely. So I'm just really fortunate that the show went ahead, and just for me personally, just given just how much I love both bands, but especially Scorpions, like to see them play, just it was just so good. Now, the other thing that worked out really well, and no doubt you guys will know because you've been listening to the Antisocial podcast, you would have listened to the last episode. However, one of the really cool things that happened as a result of these cancellations that worked in my favor was that, as mentioned before, the band had to stay in Sydney for a few extra days. So I think I mentioned in the last episode that I reached out to Joel Hoekstra from Whitesnake and just asked, I think this was on the Saturday when the show was originally cancelled, and I just sent a message through and just said, hey, do you guys want anybody to take you out or whatever it is? I live just like in Darling Harbour, so happy to help you guys out or whatever. And he just replied back and said he was going to do some stuff, some session work or whatever. So I just left it go. But then when the cancellations happened and the rescheduled date happened, I thought, well, they must be still in Sydney because, you know, they didn't actually say where they were going to be. But I thought, okay, so maybe they're still in town. So I sent Joel another message and said, hey, if you're around, if you're still in Sydney, do you want to do a podcast? You know, obviously I won't bother you on show day or anything like that, but depending on when you're around or whatever this week, I'd love to catch up and just do a podcast. And it was, for me, I just thought maybe like, you know, like for these guys, their head's in another place, you know, they're on tour, even though they've got this downtime, you know, it's just it's a bit of a mental thing, you know. So I just thought I might be pushing shit up a hill to try and get this happening. But anyway, Joel replied and said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And so the following day, I wandered down to their hotel, which literally was a 2-minute walk from my house. So I didn't realize where they were, but they were right next to my place. So this worked out incredibly well. So I wandered down there and met up with Joel, and we went up to his hotel room and just sat in his room. And he's got this beautiful, in his room, he had this beautiful view of Darling Harbour. Amazing, like the 27th floor or whatever. And we just sat up there and did the podcast. So if you haven't heard it, go back to the last episode, 204. And that's it. That's the chat that we had. And it was really cool. And I really wanted to talk for longer, but he didn't give me the vibe, but I think I was overly self-conscious about the whole thing, because I just knew that everything was up in the air. Even with the rescheduled date had been confirmed by that stage, they still had to plan for that date. And I think they still weren't 100% about Klaus and how he was feeling. And they were just crossing their fingers, hoping that everything will be okay and they'll still be able to do the show. And I don't know. I think this is a bit of paranoia for myself. I just felt like I was imposing a little bit with this whole thing. So I was trying to be as respectful as possible with Joel and just being there. So I was overly conscious of the time and I just didn't want to take advantage of it. I was just so happy that that he wanted to do the podcast. So while it was shorter than the normal podcast that we usually do for, you know, other guests, I'm incredibly happy with what came out, and I think it just sets it up for later on as well. So hopefully our paths cross again, and we can do a follow-up podcast and just meet up again, have another chat, because I think now he knows who I am. I mean, we've messaged back and forth previously, but to meet up in person finally, have that connection, have that chat. It's, for me, I always play the long game. It's not just about getting a podcast, but I'm all about building relationships and extending the network and just knowing more and more people around the world. So really good for me. I was so happy that it all happened. So walking out of the hotel and walking the 2 minutes up the road to my house was incredibly surreal and just super cool. Like I was so happy. So yeah, so if you haven't heard it, go back and have a listen to episode 204. Just a really cool chat. So doing the podcast the day before the rescheduled show worked out really well, because I got to watch Whitesnake play. I got to watch Joel on stage, and it was just another little narrative that ran along the side of the whole last several days of just the shows, what's been happening, the dramas, and also just my own story that I've sort of been reflecting on with this podcast, where, you know, I've grown up with these bands and discovering these bands, and just there was just, I wouldn't say that I was a cog in the whole thing, but I was a little part of it in my own little story. So it was cool. It was just so much fun. So yeah, go back and listen to it. Anyway, all right, so what else is going on? Okay, moving along. So I've got some housekeeping things. Now, I mentioned in the last episode about throwing it out there and giving a couple of giveaways, giving giveaways. And what people had to do was leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Facebook. On Facebook, on my official page, there's a, depending on, I use Facebook Beta at the moment, so I don't know if anybody else has got that, but there's a new updated version of Facebook that's coming out soon. So I don't think it's been rolled out everywhere, but I've got a beta version of that, or beta Bitter. Yeah, that's right. And it's actually really, really good. But I don't know whether the word is changed from reviews to recommendations and it's gone back to reviews again. I don't know. But anyway, look for reviews or recommendations and leave a review, air quotes, on there or Apple Podcasts. They were the two main places. And if you left a review on either one, I was going to pick a winner. Now, none of you guys fucking did it. So there's no giveaways this week. Oh, the amount of people that downloaded this episode, maybe everyone just downloaded and never listened to the episode. I've just been talking to myself. But the amount of downloads I had for the last Crazy Talk episode versus 0 people leaving a review anywhere was just, I don't know, I'm scratching my head. So I won't give anything away this week. So I'll run it again for another week. If you feel compelled to leave a review somewhere, definitely do so. But give me a nudge because I know that with iTunes for Apple Podcasts that I tend to only see, I don't know how it works, but I'm pretty sure I only see the ones that are from Australian users. So if you've got an American account or a British account or German or who else listens to the podcast in New Zealand, I'm not sure. And you leave a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, then I may not see it. So so if you do leave a review, maybe just flick me a quick message and let me know as well. But I've got a funny feeling that there's no one did it. So shit, hey? Well, there we go. Another week. I'll throw the Mac out there again. So if no one listened to last week's Crazy Talk episode, I've got a copy of What Tomorrow Brings, the Lord EP that we released a few years ago. I found a few leftover copies from that. It was a limited edition run of that EP, so I found a few physical copies, so I'm happy to send one of them out. And I also found a old school Dimebag tribute CD from 2006 that features about 11 or 12 cover songs from Australian metal bands, and I would say that 85 to 90% of those bands no longer exist. So it's a little bit of an Australian metal time capsule from the time, but also a bit of a heavy metal capsule, this tribute for Dimebag Darrell from Pantera. And I think it was pretty sure it was the first anniversary of his death. So lots of great covers on there. It features the Lord covering Pantera's Shattered is on there from Cowboys from Hell. And I'm pretty sure, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, but I'm pretty sure it's the first Lord song I ever recorded at Tim's place. So anyway, that's a little bit of a milestone for myself. So really fun song that we've recorded, and so that CD is up for grabs as well. So I'm going to put it out there for another week. I've actually since then, in the last week, I've actually obtained a bunch of other things I'm going to give away. I've had a few mates that have donated some things, some stuff that's coming in the post to me, some businesses, some guys who musos playing in bands, and I'm going to continue to offer things. So I'll change the incentive, the task or the action each week. But leave me a review to begin with, or maybe I'll just stick with that for a while. I need a few reviews anyway. Whatever. So get onto that, and I'll start shooting out some things in the post to people. Hey, by the way, I've got a Spotify playlist for 2020, a little metal playlist that I've been putting together. I did one last year for 2019. I've really sort of found the value in creating or curating playlists on Spotify, and especially with our album, Lord's Fallen Idols, coming out last year, I started dumping that album plus other songs that came out in 2019 into this playlist, and I got I don't know how many people, but over 100 followers on it, and it ended up looking like, when I was looking in my artist stats for Spotify, I noticed that this playlist that I'd created last year was actually generating quite a few plays for Lord. So I was hoping that might be the case for some of the other bands that I'd included on the 2019 playlist. So I thought, let's do it again for 2020. So in the show notes, in the links or the description, depending on where you're listening to this podcast, there's a link to my Spotify profile. If you click on there, you'll be able to see all the playlists that I've created. There's a whole bunch in there. And check out the 2020 metal playlist. And there's about 250 songs so far. So we're only at the end of Feb, like the beginning of March now. And yeah, 250 songs. Don't think I've doubled up anywhere. Maybe there's 2 songs from one band. I don't know, but for the most part, let's say there's 250 different bands that have released songs so far this year. So lots of really cool stuff, some well-known stuff, some underground stuff, and yeah, definitely check it out. And if you know any of the guys that are in the bands in this list, make sure you let them know, because I really want people to spread this around. The more people that are following the list, well, the more plays that these songs, these bands are going to generate. So it's all about sort of this mutual opportunity to get exposure for this great music. So, and it's good to bundle it up with classics. Ozzy's just released his new album, and who else is there? Fuck, I can't remember. I should have written down some bands. Anyway, there's heaps of stuff. There's lots of stuff. I don't know what Ozzy of all of them came to light straight away. Warbringer just put out their latest single as well. A great thrash band. So there's heaps of stuff anyway. So go and check that out. It's in the show notes. I thought I'd make a mention of that because I want to build that this year. And really make a thing of it. For me, like, it's a lot of fun, like, curating stuff like this, and I always want other people to do this stuff. I play in a band and I want other people to create these great playlists and add our songs to their playlists. And I keep reminding myself over the years that if you want something done, you just got to do it. And if anybody else does something and they jump on board, then bonus, otherwise you just get on with it and you do it yourself. So for me, I always create stuff online to, bundle Lord into it or expose other bands. And I've got a bunch of other, actually, I don't think I've ever told anybody this. I won't say what the channel is, but I've got a bunch of channels out there that are actually, massive playlists for Australian music, and on YouTube in particular. And it's just a way to help cross over the listeners and expose new music to new people. And I think it's worked really well. When I look at some of the view counts for these songs on YouTube, it's quite significant. And I like to think that it's my way of giving back without making a big song and dance about it, because I don't really want people to know that I've done some of this stuff online, and I nestle in some Lord stuff as well, because, I've got some self-interest. But I always love this sort of stuff. So I'm going to try and continue to do more and more of this stuff. So the Spotify playlist is a new version of some of these things that I've been doing for quite a few years now. So check that out in the link in the bio. Last episode I was talking about steps, my 10,000 steps, trying to get 10,000 steps a day, 70,000 a week. Last week I got a total of 67,234. I stopped counting, I think like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and as a result, I dropped the ball. Less than 3,000 steps. I could have got that walking up to the shops and back, but I fucked up. So didn't get my 70,000 steps, so I've got to ramp it up and try and play a bit of catch up over the next week. But a bit of a shout out for Andrew Shug, because Andrew, who listens to this podcast, was talking to me about these steps, and he gave me a website called runsoftheworld.com, and part of that website, I think there's a bunch of maps globally where people can walk the equivalent of these long distances around different countries. But Australia's got their own version called Run Down Under, which is off this website. And I haven't had a good look at it so far, but from what I can see, I'm quite intrigued because it's kind of up my alley. But what it does is you pay $60 a year for a subscription, and you get access to their, I guess it's like, maybe it's an app, but it's some sort of mapping system. You get a T-shirt or a singlet or whatever, and each year you get a medallion or whatever. But what you do as you walk, you enter in your steps or your kilometers that you walk or whatever it is, and it starts to tell you the equivalent of how far you've walked. So there's these routes or these tracks around Australia. So I think there's one of them where you basically walk around the entire country of Australia, and it's like 14,000 kilometers. And so there's it's like a little competition against other people that have subscribed to the website. And I thought, man, 14,000 kilometers. My goal for this year was like something like 3.6 million steps, which I'm pretty sure worked out to be 27 or 2,800 kilometers. So man, like, a big gap. and I thought I already had a stretch goal. So, Andrew, I don't know. I love the idea of it. And I may look into it. We'll see. I mean, $60 for a subscription isn't. I mean, it's not steep, but I need to. I guess I just need to work out. The big thing is whether I'd actually follow through with it, and so far so good with my own sort of steps thing. But with this thing, maybe next level is maybe this is several levels beyond where I'm at the moment, but we'll see, because I do like the idea of it. One other thing that Andrew mentioned to me was the comedian Tony Martin from Melbourne. And anyone that remembers, Martin Malloy, I think Tony Martin was also on The Late Show, I think, maybe. Late Show, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, like, just iconic Australian comedian. He's been on radio quite a bit. He's got a podcast, I think, Sizzletown, I'm pretty sure. A really popular podcast. And I'm not sure he mentioned it, but Andrew told me that apparently for a while now, Tony Martin's been trying to do this goal, this challenge where he's going to walk up and down or walk through every street in Melbourne. I don't know how long he's been doing this, but apparently he's been doing it with his wife, and he's got a bit of a method to it. And this is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I've been trying to find an app that would keep a track of every street that I've walked in and like highlight it, like, put a little line through the street so I know that I don't need to walk there again. And I would just go through my suburb, then the next suburb over, and I'll just keep branching out, and just be a fun thing to encourage my walking. But I tried Strava, I've tried Runkeeper. I'm pretty sure there's another one that I've tried, and it will show you the one that you've just done, but it doesn't collate it all together. And I guess it's quite a bit of data. So I was talking to Andrew about it, and I just made a joke saying, maybe I need to get an old street directory and just get a highlighter and just mark them out. And he sort of said, oh yeah, that might be a good idea. And you know what? Maybe I might do that. So this Run Down Under thing, this 14,000 kilometer thing is a cool idea, but I might go and grab myself a street directory. Now, street directory. You can tell I'm slurring now. Actually, one moment. Okay. Just had to get a sip of my beer just to really accentuate that slurring. Wow. Okay. Maybe I should wrap this up soon. That down under thing sounds really cool. It's fucking hell. But the street directory thing, I think there's something that there's a little fire inside me that goes, oh, this sounds like fun. Now the funny thing about this is I threw a bunch of them out in the trash like a few months back, and I just know that to track one of these down now will be incredibly hard. I just know it. I've just got a funny feeling, because they're not. You got Google Maps now. Like, why the fuck would you need a street directory? So anyway, I think that might be my next mission. I'm going to find that and start marking it out. Oh man, I sound like I'm like some, what's that kid's name? Simon from Mercury Rising. Simon. Don't touch heart. Anyway, all right. So moving along. Oh, by the way, I should mention, like, also, 14,000 kilometers around Australia, like that's a huge goal. And anybody that's been listening to the Antisocial podcast for a while will remember one of the previous guests, and I cannot remember the episode number because I've only literally just thought of this right now, but from about a year ago, I believe, a guest that I had on the podcast, and her name was Tara Romes, and she was, now I'm not going to get this right, but something like she's one of the first women to walk around Australia unassisted, like nobody else with her, and she's done it on her own. And since I met her and we had the podcast, she's continued to do these amazing expeditions around the country, and inspiring a lot of people to get out into the outdoors and do a lot of amazing things, especially for women, and empowering women as well. So Tara has we've kept in contact quite a bit, and she loves a bit of metal, and she's got an antisocial patch that she's sewn onto, I'm pretty sure, onto one of her bags or something like that, which is really, really cool. So scroll through some of the old episodes and see if you can find it. I have no idea what episode number it is, but it's pretty, maybe in the last year or two, 2018 or 2019. Anyway, go back and have a scroll, but a really great episode. She's a really, really nice person, and super inspiring. I've had a couple of people like that on the podcast, who have just done these amazing amazing feats, these challenges. So I'm hoping to get a few more people on the podcast like that. Speaking of people on the podcast, this week, episode 206 is Daniel Towns, the comedian, the Sydney comedian. Anybody listening to the podcast last week would have heard me prepping everybody for Daniel Towns for episode 204. But unfortunately for Daniel, he got bumped back a week. The last minute Joel Hoekstra episode got in there, put an elbow in, shoved themselves in there, and we end up getting that episode out. I had to get that. I was going to record it, and I thought, I'll put it out in a few weeks' time. I thought, no way. Like, I've got to make it timely. I've got to hit it while it's hot, and I'm so glad I did, because it just worked out. Anyway, it worked out really, really well to get it out. Same week as the show. Everyone's talking about Whitesnake and Scorpions, and dropping the episode just worked out just really, really well. Joel shared it a bit, and some other people have shared it around. Rock Lives. Check out Rock Lives podcast from Melbourne. That's Scott, who hosts that. He interviews a lot of great 80s rock musicians on that podcast. The guys from Frankie's shared the podcast because we spoke about Frankie's, the rock and metal club here in Sydney. Utopia Records shared it as well, and just a lot of great exposure that the podcast got. So he did really, really well. So so I'm glad I dropped it then. But poor Daniel Towns, he got pushed back a week. So this Thursday night, Daniel Towns will be on the podcast. So you can check out his comedy by going to danieltowns.com. But if you hang tight for the episode that comes out on Thursday, in the show notes, on the website, so if you go to andydowling.net and click through to the podcast and to the episode, I've dumped a bunch of videos in there. So there's some embedded YouTube videos from, I can't remember what I've put in there so far, but at least one of I think his latest special is in there, and I think there's an old school clip from him on the footy show, and there's a quick spot from one of the comedy festivals that he's done over the years. So there's some stuff in there. All his links to social media pages and everything are in there as well. But a really funny comedian, super dry, but just top guy. He came over to my place in Piedmont. We had a chat. First person to come to our place in Piedmont for the podcast, and plenty more to come throughout the year. So I really hope that this one goes well. So as always, I've mentioned in the past, a bit of social media love goes a long way. So please share, like, retweet, love heart, comment, tag, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. It helps. And it looks good for the guests because, they're using their time well, getting on the podcast. So, so that's coming out this Thursday. What else is going on in my world? I've been helping out a little bit of PR marketing activity for Dominus Records, which is our little label for Lord. We are putting out a few new releases and what's the word? Reminding. Yeah, very basic word there, but there you go. It wasn't front of mind. Reminding people of some of the other releases that are on our roster. But the main release that's coming out, which is not so much through Dominus Records, but Dominus Records is helping to promote it, is the power metal band Illustrions. Now, if you're not familiar with Illustrions, they're from Newcastle, north of Sydney, and the latest, Tim in our band, Lord, has sung on previous releases, but they've had a whole range of different singers over the years. But Tim is on the latest release that's just come out called Carcinogized. Yeah, Carcinogized. That'll do. You can't get much more out of me this evening. That's out now, so you can check that out. And CDs are coming soon, so you can pre-order the CD. I think there's a T-shirt as well, some stuff. It's all over on the Illustrions website and their web store. But you can download the actual album straight away now, so that's available right now. Also, Serenity Defiled, who is on the Dominus Records roster, is just releasing their new album called Dead Earth Syndicate. This is a death thrash metal band that Tim's cousin Rick is. It's his baby, and Tim is on vocals once again for this release, and if you want to hear Tim do some really, really harsh vocals, some extreme vocals, and yes, he's done some of the stuff over the years with Lord, and he's got the Black and Angel project, etc. But you should hear him on Serenity Defiled. Like, this new album is really, really good. So new album's out right now. Same deal. CDs are being pressed at the moment, but you can order the album and get the digital download straight away. So make sure you listen to that, share it around, and let other people know. Now, the other release that we're reminding people of is From Beyond, which is Mark Furtner's band, or his solo project that existed prior to him joining Lord, and he finally got the second release out. I'm pretty sure, I don't know, I probably should pay more attention to what Mark's doing, but I'm pretty sure this is part 2 of a 3-part, like a trilogy or something like that. So oh fuck, man, like, here's me trying to pronounce this fucking album title. Aquilian Arcana. Yeah, all right. Anyway, really good album. So if you love a bit of Symphony X, which is, Mark fucking loves Michael Romeo, and it's just this really epic, chuggy, progressive, dark sort of metal, bit of Evergrey sort of vibe to it, Symphony X. Check it out. So we've reminded people of that release. It's digital only. There's no physical copies that are available for that release. And you can check all that out over at Dominus Records. So you can go to dominusrecords.com, or if you go to facebook.com/DominusREC, so that's DOMINUSREC, there should be some links in the feed for Ilium, Serenity Defiled, and From Beyond as well. So I've been helping them out with a bit of marketing, sending out the mailing list and doing a bit of online stuff to get music out there, sending some promos. So yeah, hey, if you're from a online radio program or you're a webzine dude or dudette, hit me up, because I've got some music that I can send you. Very, very busy. Now I'm just having a look at my little sheet. I am fading big time, as you can tell from the slurring that's coming through this microphone right now. So I think that's about it. So I'm going to wrap it up right now. Now, what's coming up this week? I'm trying to think. Apart from the Daniel Towns episode coming out on Thursday, I don't know if there's anything immediate. Oh, my parents are coming to Sydney. Oh, wow. Like, they're coming this sounds so sarcastic. No, I'm actually excited. They're coming this Saturday, hanging out with us. They're going to stay with us in Piedmont, so I'll do a bit of sightseeing with them, show them around, and that'll be fun. Tomorrow night, which will be too late for you guys, but I'm going to go to Frankie's. I'm going to start, well, look, actually, hang on, let's backtrack. I'm going to go to Frankie's tomorrow night. I'm going to go and hang out, see the guys from Frankie's world-famous house band, which is Jordan and Joel McDonald, and Bobby Polton, I'm pretty sure. I haven't got his name in front of me, but I should know by now. And they always get a bunch of other people to get up on stage and sing and play. And if there's international musicians in town, they usually drop in. Joel Hoekstra dropped in there last week as well. We mentioned that on the podcast I did with him. And I just thought, you know what? I've been umming and ahhing about this for so long. Bobby sent me a message today and said, I know you live in Piedmont now, so you need to come down and maybe get up on stage and play a song, because I've got to go for a piss break at some stage. So I don't know about getting up on stage, because I'm a little bit, I don't know, that stuff scares the shit out of me, even though I've been playing for quite a few years and playing in a band and all that sort of stuff. I just, the getting up, just spur of the moment, sort of spontaneous sort of thing just scares the crap out of me. But maybe that's a challenge for this year. So anyway, I'm going to go to Frankie's tomorrow night. I'm going to go and hang out, just have a beer and say hi to everyone. And I don't know, I've got a bit of a game plan in my head of how I can schedule this into my week without completely ruining the rest of my week, because, you know, a late Monday night could just throw the rest of my week out. But I'm a big boy. I'm sure I can work it out. So anyway, I'm sure I'll have something to talk about next week. I think that's enough. I'm going to finish this beer, sit here in the car like a loner, and then walk upstairs, and hopefully Larry has shut the fuck up. So thank you so much. Keep sharing the podcast around. Please leave a review somewhere, because I just want to get rid of some stuff. I'm trying to declutter, guys. Like, I've got so many CDs and like things, and I'm acquiring new stuff. So leave a review somewhere. You're pretty much like guaranteed that you're going to get something for free. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Facebook or wherever. I mean, it can be anywhere. I don't really care, but those places are usually the most impactful. So anyway, leave a review. Let me know. I'll flick some stuff out. But until next week, folks, thank you so much for the support. The amount of people listening to this podcast, like even over the last week, has been ridiculous. Like it's just crazy. So anyway, I'm probably losing people now. All right. Until next week, folks. See you. Until Thursday. All right. See you then. Bye-bye.
Larry.